Hi, today we'll be talking about finding the area of a triangle. And to start things off, we'll start by defining what is area. And area is the number of 1 by 1 squares that can fit into any given shape. And the example that we'll be using is the area of a rectangle. And here I have a drawing of a rectangle. And we all know that the area of a rectangle is length times width times height. And so here, this side over here is the width, and this down here is the length. And in order to find the rectangle, we look back at the definition and we know that it's 1 by 1 squares that fit into a given shape. And so since our paper here is already gridded out, we can just go ahead and draw in the lines, and we can just go ahead and count all the little squares within this rectangle. And that is how we're able to find our area of a rectangle, which is length times width times height. But the purpose of this video is to find the area of a triangle. And we know that the area of a triangle is 1/2 times base times height. But the big question is, why and how did we get 1/2 times base times height out of a triangle when before a rectangle, the area of a rectangle was length times width times height? And so that is the purpose of this video, to try to find how we are able to get 1/2 times base times height in the area of a triangle. So here I have 3 different triangles. This blue one here is an acute triangle, and this green one is a right triangle, while this last pink one is an obtuse triangle. And so the first thing we want to do is turn these 2 triangles into rectangles. And that is how we're able to find the 1/2 in area of a triangle, because triangles are like pretty much half of a rectangle. So here we go, we're turning this into that, and so now we have 90-degree angles in all 4 corners. And with this triangle here, this is the height right here. So the height is right here down the center. So we label that height, and this is the length down here still. So because we are dividing this in half, this is how we were able to find the area of this triangle, which is 1/2 times base times height. And now moving on to this green right triangle, we pretty much will be doing the same thing. We're going to turn this into a rectangle as well. So we're drawing in our dotted lines to give the illusion of a rectangle. And so now we have our 90-degree angles on all 4 sides again, all 4 corners I mean. And so looking at this, we know that this is the height and this is the base. And this is probably the most simple one, because we can clearly see that this triangle here is definitely half of this rectangle. And so that was how we were able to find the equation of this triangle, which is 1/2 times base times height. And now moving on to our last and final triangle. This is the most complicated one, because instead of turning it into a rectangle like the rest, we are going to just turn this into a right triangle in order to get a height. And so we're going to draw here. Oops, get rid of that. We're going to draw our dotted lines to turn this into a right triangle. And so now we have our 90-degree angle down here. And so we're going to label this small right triangle over here. This is the height, and down here is X, and this is the base of the original triangle. And so we're going to be working with this small right triangle and our big right triangle, as well as our original triangle, all in one. And so now we're going to find the formula for them all. And our big right triangle, so the whole shape here. So our right triangle, our big, let's do that, big right triangle here equals to 1/2 times x plus b times h. and then our small right triangle, which is this right here. So small right triangle will be equal to 1/2 times x times h. And so now what we want to do is get rid of this small triangle here in order to find the area of our original triangle. And in order to do that, we're going to subtract this from this formula from this formula here. So we're going to take 1/2 times x h plus bh, and this becomes xh plus bh because we're taking the height from here before and we're just distributing it into the x plus b here, and that's how we ended up with xh plus bh. So we're going to subtract 1/2 times xh. And so now our next step is to distribute our 1/2 into what is in the parentheses here. So now we have 1/2 xh plus 1/2 bh minus 1/2 times xh. So let's put these in parentheses here. And so now we can clearly see that we have the same numbers on both sides. So we're going to cross them both out because they cancel each other out. And so that is how we are left with 1/2 times base times height, and that is how we end up with our area for our last triangle. And this is how we find the area of triangles.